Hi, Tacoma. This is Abby, and it is Friday, April 24th. It's the fourth of our Flash Poetry workshops, and this is the last Friday of National Poetry Month 2020. And I want to thank you for joining me for these workshops, and even more so for sending me your poems. I do want to thank you. Those poems have really kept me afloat the past couple weeks. This is me giving you a hug through YouTube. This week, I want to talk specifically about genre, and it's because of a particular piece I read in the current issue of Image Journal. But I'll get to that in a second. I want to start by asking you a question. What makes a poem poetry? What makes fiction a story? And I ask you not because I want a definition or I want to establish rules or create a label. If anything, the rules remain unclear and also not very helpful in terms of coming up with a collective idea of what a poem is, should be, could be, can be. I ask because I want to know how you recognize something as poetry based on your own experiences, based on your own history. What makes you recognize something as poetry? For me, poetry is the condensation of thought and language illuminated by sound or rhythm. This is how I know something is poetry. There are all kinds of factors that make a poem for me. I wrote a poem last week and it was one very short line. I'll read it to you. It's called What the Dead Do. All night, the dead must wait for morning in America, unable to smoke or even wring their hands as they long to save the living more than we do. Now, how do you know that that's a poem? How do you know it's not a Facebook post or a tweet? Well, I'm the poet. My intention was to write a poem. I like to think I'm actually the speaker in this poem too. My intention was to condense a moment, something that I was thinking and feeling. It was also the moment, what it was the place where I was putting this language. It was also the form. If you could see the poem on the page, there's 2 words per line, except for one 3-word line, long to save. So the form also makes it a poem for me. So back to this piece from Image Journal that I mentioned earlier. I came across this on Facebook. It's a piece of fiction. It's written by Renee Simms, who's in Tacoma, is an associate professor at University of Puget Sound, is an acclaimed writer, author of the collection of Meat Behind Mars. And when I first heard this piece, it felt like a poem. It was illuminated by the rhythm, the sound. It was definitely a condensation of thought. I want to know what you think about this. So I'm going to ask Renee to share with us Assembly Line Prayer from Image Journal.
Assembly Line Prayer. Making a truck, making thousands of trucks, means standing on your feet and bending and contorting your body, your only body, to do the same highly particularized job for hours each day in order to fashion the plastic molding inside a vehicle, or install its motor controls, or perform any of the hundreds of other tasks needed for a steel product that weighs nearly 1 ton and could crush you should it fall. Tasks like fabricating glass and mirror components and parts, running presses, pinching and securing wires for routing, testing engines for leaks, visually inspecting parts for defects, operating torque guns, programming and operating ergonomic arms, lifting 40-pound machinery, lifting and hoisting engines into a frame, operating a rivet gun or cordless drill, reaching over your head with your neck craned back as you screw a bolt into the dark underbelly of a suspended truck, attaching door handles, loading packaging machines, unloading packaging machines, making gauge needles for instrument panels, building sub-assemblies, bolting, cutting, stamping, sewing, clipping, cementing, or otherwise fastening parts together each day, and doing this job repeatedly until it thins your ligaments, swells your joints and feet, until you have vertigo, headaches, tinnitus, hearing loss, a torn ACL, weak knees, lung cancer, drug addictions, until your arm hurts and your spine stiffens, then refuses to rotate, which means your back won't work. And the policy is you can't sit down because collectively, as a union worker, you gave up the 6-minute break time in 2009. And beyond physical stamina, this job requires no demands that you commit some part of your mind and heart to an unshakable belief in the logic of global capital, which means that on a smaller scale, you commit some part of your mind and heart to an unshakable belief in the necessity of placing a 2-inch needle into an instrument panel over and over and over again. The repetition itself, a type of holiness, as if these daily acts which destroy you, ounce by ounce and breath by breath, are your destiny, as if your highly particularized, repetitive acts are the inevitable calling of your life, your destiny owned by men with untold power, so long as you both may live.
Thanks for sharing that, Renee. How do you feel about this? What makes this fiction? What makes this poetic? Where do you recognize rhythms in here? Where do you recognize the lyric? Where do you recognize music? For me, I hear it in the repetition that comes with a list, starting over constantly. And in this particular fiction piece's content, it is layered in tasks and labor so that at the end you feel as burdened as the character that you imagine when you hear the piece. I have some prompts I want you to take into the week and send to me later. The first prompt is to write a poem about something you've done hundreds or thousands of times, step by step. Second prompt is a little bit more complicated. If you write prose more often than poetry, I want you to try and write a poem that has only 3 words per line. If you write poetry more often than you write prose, I want you to write a prose poem, one that is not going to use line breaks or enjambment to carry any of its meaning. Those are the 2 prompts that I want you to take into the week. Go ahead and send me what you get before next Friday at gritcitypoetLaureate@gmail.com. I'm happy to send you a bit of brief feedback. And I will see you again next Friday. Let's keep doing this through the stay home, stay healthy orders. Let's meet every Friday and let's get writing. I can barely feel my feet.